Looks like pea soup.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I want to call to order the meeting of the Common Council. This is for Monday, November 7th. If you could all please press your aye and confirm button.
Can you press it for him?
No, just we're good. We'll go.
11 are present, Your Honor.
All right, we'll proceed. If you'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for our invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, we're grateful today and every day for the gifts you've bestowed upon the city of Green Bay. We appreciate the talented, dedicated people who live and work in an effort to build the Green Bay community. This weekend, many of us participated in charity events to bring awareness and financial support to the disabled veterans of our community. Bless all those affected with challenges as we pray for them and those who support their daily lives. As we approach Veterans Day, let us be mindful and offer our prayers and support to all those who have served and continue to serve in our military. Also this week, our country will elect leadership for local, state, and our nation's highest office. We are grateful for the freedom of public office and pray that the elected officials turn to you for wisdom and strength as they build community for all. Please bless all our elected leaders and our military personnel, especially those serving on the USS Green Bay. We ask this in your name. Amen. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of the October 13th meeting. There's a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Tom Dwayne. Anything you want to discuss regarding these minutes? Seeing no lights, all in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it, and the minutes for the October 18th meeting have been approved. We're now looking for a motion for approval of the agenda. Motion by Alderman Dave Nenning, seconded by Alderman Chris Weary to approve the agenda. Anything here you wanted to handle separately, differently? Seeing no lights, all in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it, and the agenda before you has been approved.
Report by the mayor.
Okay, just a couple things. I just want to mention, as you all know and was mentioned in the invocation, Veterans Day, the real big event is on the 11th at the Veterans Arena. I know many of you have attended that over the years, so it's 10:30 at the Veterans Arena on November 11th. I do want to mention, too, that as happens here on occasion, we have talented people that get offered other positions, and Dawn Fuller is going to be leaving us. She has taken a position with the Unified School District in De Pere, and so I think this is your last meeting, Dawn, so should be an interesting one, but you've been here 16 years?
It'll be 17 in January.
17. All right, well, we appreciate all you've done. You've moved up the ladder here, and I think this is a good move for you professionally, and we appreciate all your service, so thank you. And then just to talk to some of the older people, and some of you are new and some of you have been here some time, but today we have a public hearing on the budget at noon, and that's the first thing, announcements and a few other things, but we have the public hearing. People will be able to weigh in on a public hearing regarding our budget. Then what we have done in the past is we go through the council agenda. So we have a meeting of the Common Council and Parks Committee. We go through that. And then then we will go on to the committee as a whole. And there's a couple resolutions that are timely that are on here. And then we will take up the report of the proposed budget, and that's when we'll discuss the budget. Anything you want in there, And then after we come to some type of consensus, we'll take a short break and we come back and adopt the levy. So that's the way it goes. I'm happy to answer any questions along the way, but that's kind of the process. So that's the way it's worked in the past. And again, it's your meeting, and that's the way the agenda has just been approved, and that's the way we will proceed. That is all I have. Thank you.
We're on to announcements.
Any announcements by any of the council people? Alderman Mark Stoyer?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm growing this little stubble here. When the police department is having a little gathering of sorts where, what is it, $50 that you're donating to, what is it again? Special Olympics. Anyway, I'm challenging all of, well, you already have some guys, so it doesn't matter. But I'm asking council members and city staff and other people to grow, and with the women, I think there's extensions, but it's like a $50 donation to Special Olympics, and see what you can do.
All right, thank you.
I haven't shaved in a month.
Me either. Announcements? I don't see any other lights. Okay, Mark, you want to turn off your light?
Okay, we're on to public hearing, budget summary, City of Green Bay, Wisconsin.
So at this point of the meeting, the floor is open to the public, and it's a public hearing regarding the budget summary of the City of Green Bay. And before you, in your agenda, are listed the expenditures for the past 2015, 16, and 17, as well as the revenues that are being proposed. There's also a balance sheet in there which shows you the balance of segregated funds that we hold here in the City of Green Bay. And this is the document that was published in the newspaper, and now it is open to hear from the public. So if there's anyone here this afternoon who would like to comment on the budget summary, if you'd please step to the podium and state your name. Anyone who wants to speak to this, anyone wishing to be heard, well, then we'll let the record show that no one came forward. All right, clerk.
We're on to reappointments for the Water Commission, Nanette Nelson.
Motion by Alderman Joe Moore, seconded by Alderman Dave Nenning, to approve the reappointment of Nan Nelson to the Green Bay Water Commission. There's a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Ayes have it, and Nan has been reappointed, and thank you.
Referral to petitions and communications, referral, anything that we receive by noon in the clerk's office, we'll now accept any late communications you may have.
All right. We'll begin with Alderman Vanderleest, late communications.
Thank you, Mayor. Communication request to set the TIF assistant guidelines by the city ordinance. The starting point for the TIF assistant should begin at 10% and up to 15% for projects with greater hardships. Also, I'd just like to bring one other thing. I haven't had a chance to talk with a lot of the alters. I called some, but they weren't able to, just as a communication concerning our budget. It says, I'm concerned with the direction of the city budget. The Joint Finance Personnel Committee added an additional $219,920 to already high spending increase of $2.2 million from the mayor's budget. This added spending requests a total spending increase from $104.1 million to $106.5 million. Property tax on an average home, a $128,000 home, will pay about $26 more than last year. This represents one of the largest property increases over the last decade. Keep in mind, property taxes in Green Bay already are high. Average property in Green Bay compared to Ashwaubenon is about $300 to $350 higher. Green Bay is about $250 to $300 higher for the people in Alloways. Recently, I spoke to the realtor who said that when new home buyers learn about high property taxes in Green Bay, they often request to look at other communities first. Green Bay must hold the line so property taxes in Green Bay can be comparable to other communities. Note, at the current 20 to 30% higher per year, this is a real problem, yet the sentiment is to let's keep spending. I feel that we can do better as far as the tax goes. It says this budget is in the wrong direction. I hope the city council will consider taking a portion of the excess tax money from the capital improvements, roughly $1.4 million. There's $2.8 million in that fund. We take the $1.4 million, the whole property taxes down, and make other reductions so that the property tax can see some relief.
All right.
I feel that by doing this, that it'll help the community as a whole. And that's
You
my-
can submit that communication. I will tell you, both those items you talked about, the excess property tax and the excess sales tax, as well as the budget, are on the agenda this afternoon. So I don't really know where I would direct that communication, and you've stated that. The other communication is not a problem. I mean, we'll direct that to the RDA.
This was just kind of an open communication.
All
as
right,
far
I
as-
appreciate that.
And,
Okay,
you.
thank you. Alderman Joe Moore on late communications.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is for the Law Department, and it will have to be before Protection and Welfare as well. It's to review our policy on liquor licenses, specifically focusing on the review, suspension, and revocation with possible action.
All right, thank you. On to Alderman Randy Scannell.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. This is also for protection and welfare. To consider imposing a liquor moratorium on all convenience stores as well as phasing out current licenses. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else, you guys? Chris, do you have any late communications?
No, I do not.
Then I'll entertain a motion. A motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Weary, to refer all petitions and communications. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. Late communications have been referred. Alderman Van Lees, could I just ask you to hit your cancel button? Thank you.
Reports for council action, report of the Plan Commission.
All right, we have a motion by Alderman Bill, did you do that, Bill? Bill Galvin, Alderman Galvin, seconded by Alderman Joe Moore, to approve the report of the Green Bay Plan Commission. That was for the meeting held on Monday, October 24th. Are there any items in this report you wish to handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it, and that report has been approved.
Report of the Public Arts Commission.
All right, there's a motion by Alderman Galvin, second by Alderman Randy Scannell, to approve the report of the Green Bay Public Art Commission. By way of knowledge, we adopted this commission a couple months ago, and this is really the first meeting they had, kind of approving some of the things on there. You'll be seeing this report every 2 weeks as you see all the other reports. Seeing no lights on here, there's a motion and a second. All in favor of adoption, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it, and the report of the Public Arts Commission has been adopted.
Report of the Traffic, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Commission.
All right, there's a motion by the Alderwoman. This Monday morning stuff is tough on the Alderperson Dorf, I'm sorry. Seconded by Alderman Nenning, to approve the report of the Traffic, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Commission. That was for the meeting held on Monday, October 17th. Any items in this report you wish to discuss separately? Seeing no lights, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Ayes have it, that's been approved.
Report of the Finance Committee.
There's a motion by Alderman Tom Duane, seconded by Alderman Mark Stoyer, to approve the report of the Finance Committee for their meeting, which was held on Tuesday, October 25th. Are there any items in this report you wish to handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. That report's been approved.
Report of the Improvement and Service Committee.
All right, there's a motion by Alderman Randy Scannell, seconded by Alderman Chris Weary, to approve the report of the Improvement and Service Committee, and that was for the meeting held on October 26th. Any items under this report you wish to handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. Ayes have it. That report's been approved in its entirety.
Report of the Personnel Committee.
Looking for a motion by Alderman Joe Moore, second by Alderman Randy Scannell, to approve the report of the Personnel Committee for their meeting, which was held on Tuesday, October 25th. Any items under this report you wish to handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. That report has been adopted.
Report of the Protection and Welfare Committee.
There's a motion to approve by Alderperson Dorf, seconded by Alderman Weary, to approve the report of the Protection and Welfare Committee. That was for their meeting, which was held on Monday, October 24th. Any items under this report you wish to handle separately? 1 and 2. Okay, item 1 and 2 are pulled by Alderman Zima. All in favor of the remainder items, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. So item 3 has been approved. What are your wishes regarding item 1? Motion to approve, Alderman Joe Moore, second by Alderman Mark Stoyer. Alderman Guy Zema.
Thank you, Your Honor. Our last council meeting, we voted down the expansion of 3 convenience stores to sell alcohol. And here this week, we have 2 more coming right before us again, similar situation. Number 1 here is, in fact, right next to the Boys and Girls Club, not far from the school. I think there was a communication in today to look about a citywide ban perhaps, but these 2 here are both adjacent to neighborhoods and close to fragile neighborhoods. And I guess it all comes down to what is it we really want for our city? What is the image and what is the reality we want to be known for in Green Bay? I don't think it's for the proliferation of liquor stores. I would like to give the short history of how liquor used to be sold. At the beginning of my career, it was basically sold at liquor stores. They were there just for that purpose. Is there some problem, Your Honor?
No, not at all.
You're kind of gazing off into space here. Do you have a problem?
Continue. You're on the clock.
Yeah, well, I don't wear a clock. Anyway, the history is that it was a very serious matter, the selling of liquor. It was either at taverns or it was at liquor stores. And slowly but surely, they get their foot in the door. First it's the beer only into the grocery stores, and it's then having a liquor store at a grocery store, but it would have to have a separate entrance, and it slowly slides into, really doesn't have to have that anymore. And it just goes, and it's a proliferation, constant proliferation of liquor stores. And at the time, the liquor folks made their case very succinctly that, hey, when you start watering down the number of places that people that have less responsibility toward it, really, it's not their livelihood. The liquor stores were, their entire livelihood depended on the sale and following the rules for liquor stores. And there weren't any violations. And they said, you let this proliferate, you're going to have problems. And I don't know, 3 or 4 years back, when we did a sting, it was above 70% of all the convenience stores and grocery stores failed. They sold to minors. And about a month later, month and a half, don't hold me to this exactly, they ran a second run. And of course, what happened? 50% failed. 50% of those that had failed again. And again, what is it you want for your neighborhood? And I know it's my feeling that the easier the access to alcohol, the more alcohol will be consumed, pure and simple. I think in my last meeting I said, do we want one at every corner convenience store and grocery store? Well, here we have convenience store, grocery store, right in the same neighborhood, by the way, only a few blocks apart. And I consider these to be fragile neighborhoods. And I just don't think we can let alcohol sales dominate our neighborhoods and business districts. There are countries where it's only bought at liquor stores. Depends on what you want for your community. I know I was happy as heck, a neighborhood was when the Quick Trip took over Walnut and Maple Street, because it meant the elimination of a liquor store there. It was going to sell hard liquor. I know the neighborhood at Gross and 9th in my district, had been converted to a liquor store, was not a happy situation, but it is now no longer a liquor store. I think the more of them you have, the more problems you're asking for. So I'm asking, as 2 weeks ago, This is a very similar situation, maybe more serious because you're right next to a Boys and Girls Club where you're trying to have good examples. So I'm just encouraging people to vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Barbdorf.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm on the Protection and Welfare Committee. I'm the co-chair for that, or the assistant chair. When these requests come to us, I want to say that as a committee, we very, very carefully look at the requests. We consult with legal, we consult with the police, we see if there are any problems, we look at the plan, the safety and security plan that's in place to ensure that the liquor will not be able to be shoplifted, I guess. A lot of the places keep the cases locked or keep this alcohol behind the counter. In these two cases, both of these places, my understanding is, already sell beer and wine. They have a liquor license, not a Class A liquor license, but they already sell alcohol. There have been no problems. We are not a rubber stamp committee, as might have been said. We look very carefully, we take our responsibility very seriously when it comes to this. One of the proposals by Maria Garcia, she lives in the area. She has owned this store for a long time. She came before Protection and Welfare, very sincere about her wish to ensure that this caused no problems in her neighborhood. And I would definitely be in favor of approving both of these applications. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Randy Scannell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, at committee, I also voted to approve these. Alder Zimba wishes to impose a moratorium on convenience stores. He's going to vote no for everyone that comes up now, which is perfectly fine. But for myself, I believe that that's a major policy change for this city. We'll be changing ordinances if we end up phasing out liquor licenses that are in convenience stores already. And I feel we're putting the cart before the horse here, that we should be doing the policy work, and then our vote should be going accordingly. So these businesses, what we've done in the past, the procedure, if there's no problems with the business, no problems in the neighborhood, there's no reason to deny them the license, and so I see no reason to deny them now. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Nenning.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to number one, which is the issue before us right now. This is in Alderman Moore's district, but right across University Avenue from my district. And I want to clarify, this is not an expansion. They currently have a license that allows them to sell both beer and liquor. And I verified that this morning with the clerk's office. I don't know exactly how long they've had that license, but it's been there for many, many years. I have lived in that neighborhood since 1984, and I believe they've had it through that whole period of time. I think they had the license before the Boys and Girls Club chose to locate on the corner next to them. What we have here is a situation where the past owner, the current holder of the license, Tom Matusik, is selling that convenience store to new owners. And, you know, when you're selling a business, the new owners want to operate it just as it's been in the past. So, you know, what we're doing here is we're allowing them to continue as it's been in the past. There have not been disturbances in the neighborhood because they sell alcohol at that convenience store. You know, like I said, I've lived there for many years. I know the neighbors. I've talked to residents in the neighborhood, and I personally don't see any reason to deny this. That address, that establishment has had this license for many, many years, so it's not an expansion. It's continuing as they've been operating. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Tom Duane.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor.
They still will be able to operate as they had in the past. They're just asking, I believe, to sell hard liquor. But in any case, I just want to ask Alderman Moore. A lot of times I refer these to the alderman in the area because there might be something going on that we don't know. And if he feels, just like we had on Irwin Street, I support him 100% because of what the activity. Do you approve of this one?
Yeah, this is a commercial center. I mean, it's all commercial along that whole stretch of University Avenue right there. I don't think it would affect the neighborhood, and I don't know of any problems we've ever had, so I'd be fine with it.
All right, I don't see any other lights, and we can use the board on this. This is Alderman Zima.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, you know, the Protection and Welfare Committee isn't there to be a rubber stamp for anything. They get to look at each and every license and judge them on its merits of how they think it'll affect the area. They can vote yes, they can vote no. There's no restriction that just because they pass a background check that it has to be given. We do have that right to be something other than a rubber stamp, a formal rubber stamp. Also, I was invited to the Neighborhood Leadership Board this past Thursday and gave a small talk there. And they asked for a show of hands from people who were interested in restricting the continued sale of liquor in our community. It seemed like a vast majority of them raised their hands. I know they didn't have a big discussion about it, but at least that was the impression they got. Now, you can say this is on a busy street. The ones we were looking at before were on busy streets too. Dousman, Mason, what was the other one?
Mather and Broadway.
Mather and Broadway, all busy streets. But right behind them are neighborhoods. The neighborhood right behind the first one we're talking about here, and I'll restrict my comments to this one, is a fragile neighborhood. There are problems in the neighborhood. There is a change of, older people dying off, different folks coming in, and the police calls in this area are heavy enough. When people run out of alcohol, the more convenient it is for them to resupply themselves, the more they drink. It's just as simple as that. So I'm very much opposed to this. It is very close to a neighborhood, and I think our leadership people are interested in creating a different image to Green Bay. I mean, we used to be known as like the most liquor licenses per capita in the state of Wisconsin, maybe the United States of America. Now, is it just going to become every convenience store, every liquor store? Is this going to be our new standard? That any grocery store, because I mean, really, they talked about fairness at the committee, and I guess that is something to talk about. But we started to say we want to do something for our neighborhoods, and not only our neighborhood, but our business, our retail image of our city. Do you want an abundance of places to buy liquor? Do you want them every other building, every other block? I don't think so. So I'm encouraging to vote no on this. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Did you want to say something, Tom? No, all right, turn it off. All right.
I keep hitting it and it just won't come off. It did that when I said to.
All right. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just quick.
Okay, hang on. Alderman Scannell.
Yeah, I just want to, since the leadership council was brought up, I was there. I'd like to address that too then. I don't know that I would say there was a majority of hands raised when that question was asked, and I thought that question was really rather inappropriately asked, since obviously not the whole issue had been discussed. Certainly afterwards, many of them came to me and were very concerned about making these kind of changes without first getting more community input, more business input. They were not supportive of denying these licenses. They weren't going to take a stand until more was made known, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Bill Galvin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Former police officer, I don't know how many times that I sat at P&W representing the department. And we always had concerns about licenses being issued not only to convenience stores, but to bars and restaurants. We did do a number of compliance checks. I don't think there's been any done in quite some time. The violations were pretty much across the board, spread amongst restaurants, liquor stores, and the convenience stores. And those violations were addressed not only by citations, but also by the P&W. And if they felt that those businesses were out of line, then the city council took action. And that's been well documented. I think as we move forward, I'd have to agree with Alderman Scannell. If the city is going to have an about face on how it applies the standards for liquor license applications, I think we need to establish a policy beforehand. We're making people spend a lot of time and effort applying for these licenses when it seems certain members of council have already had their minds made up that they're not going to grant them. And I don't think it's fair to make people go through all this effort if the end result is always going to be a denial. It is, I think, a breath of fresh air to see something like this happen, where we're starting to reconsider how many licenses we want to grant, considering how many we've granted in the past. I mean, since I've been on council, we granted a liquor store a license catty corner from a convenience store in my district, which is also selling liquor. So I guess I'm wondering how we're going to establish a policy, and that policy has to be fair, as it's applied to all business owners within our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion, a second regarding item 1 under the report of the Protection and Welfare Committee. And if you'd use the board, yes, I said that. A yes vote approves the application for the Class A liquor license, a no vote denies it. Okay, and that passes by a vote of 8-4. Good? Thank you. We're now on to item 2. And this is regarding the approval application for Class A license at 1723 University Avenue. There's a motion to approve by Alderman Joe Moore, second by Alderman Bill Galvin. Any discussion on this? Alderman Zima?
Well, now it's disintegrating down to grocery stores again. This one is just a couple blocks down. It's about a half a block away from a full-fledged liquor store that's on the corner of Henry and University. And now it's a grocery store. They've been there 10 years making a living. Now they want to expand it to be able to sell alcohol. I don't want to repeat the things I've said earlier, but it's my feeling this is the proliferation. We are encouraging the proliferation by continually voting for these. These are all in older neighborhoods that we're trying to reestablish also. And, you know, a convenience store that's a mile from the closest house or something like that, that's a whole different story. But I've noticed that I was surprised. I went into the Christ gas station. It's a whole wall of liquor that very easy to somebody to pick it and walk it out with it, I think. But I just don't think we can keep encouraging that. We're just going to keep rubber stamping them because, well, everybody's got a right to sell it. Is that really what we want for our community? I don't know. We voted down 3 last week. Now we're voting them in again. Maybe you got to go back and look at those again too. Not that I want them, but I mean, what is our policy on this? But I think this is different. These are in close to very fragile neighborhoods. They're on a business street, but you just go right behind. It's neighborhoods. So I'm opposed to this too. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Andy Nicholson?
Thanks, Mayor. Did this business have, were they selling beer and liquor before?
Alderman Moore, this is your district, right?
You know.
This is only a beer license.
They are applying for a beer license, and they have had no license to sell alcohol prior to this request.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it?
Yep, that's it.
Alderman Randy Scannell.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to address the idea of these fragile neighborhoods. I kind of take umbrage with that. I mean, what are we saying? That our inner city is, doesn't have the right to buy alcohol, but if you're a little more prosperous and live out in the outer ring, you certainly do. It strikes me as an odd note and a sour note. There are, Alder Zimmer mentions how these, on the outer ring, they're out in the industrial parks. Well, that's not true. They're in neighborhoods, but we just apparently don't care about those neighborhoods. I don't know, I feel we really need to have a comprehensive policy, and that this is nitpicking and cherry picking and without any real foundation, in fact, of harm to come. So I approve of granting them a license. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll use the board on this as well. This is item 2. There's a motion and a second to approve the application. This is for 1723 University. And that passes on a vote of 7-5. Thank you.
Report of the Protection and Welfare Committee granting operator licenses.
There's a motion by Alderman Tom DeWayne, seconded by Alderman Joe Moore, to approve the report of the Protection and Welfare Committee where they granted the operating licenses. Are there any names on this report you wish to object to or abstain from? Seeing no lights, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. Ayes have it. Those licenses have been approved.
Receive and place on file building permit report for October 2016 and account summary trial balance for September 2016.
All right, we have a motion by Alderman Zimmon, seconded by Alderman Joe Moore, to receive and place on file the 2 reports stated by the clerk. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. Ayes have it. Those 2 reports have been received and placed on file.
Right. On to Committee of the
You take these
Whole,
separate.
action to rescind the adoption of miscellaneous ordinance number 2-16 on October 18th, 2016, because the 30-day statutory notice period was not met.
Kind of a technical thing, so just look for a motion to approve this. You want an explanation? This, okay. There's a motion by Alderman Vanderleest and seconded by Alderman Tom Slotnick. Clerk, or Attorney, if you could just explain why this is being rescinded, because we don't have we had 18 days instead of 30, right?
Yes, Mayor. So the statutory requirement is that the third reading not occur before, or the public hearing not occur less than 30 days after the first introduction. It occurred, I believe, 28 days. So we just missed it. That was a miscommunication because we had somebody go out on sick leave, and so we didn't get that communication made.
And what's this regarding?
This is the master, if I believe it's the comp plan. It's a comp plan amendment for the Finger Road area.
It's Finger Road. We have to have 30 days. We had 28. So if we have a motion, a second to rescind this, then we'll get back into that 30-day groove where we should have been. It was a technical error on our part.
So it's not going away, we're
It's gonna come back, yeah. And it's the Finger Road rezoning. Alderman Zima, did you want to speak to that item?
Well, maybe I'm on the wrong one. Are we on item number 10?
You know what? We are not. We are on item 9.5. I'm sorry. The first item under committee as a whole
Oh,
is,
I apologize.
Yeah.
That was what I was talking about. Thank you.
okay. So with that, we have a motion, we gotta use the board on this. This is the first item, which is not properly marked, but it's the action to rescind the ordinance 2-16. It's Finger Road Comprehensive Plan, and it'll come back here at the next meeting. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Now we are on to item 10.
Item 10, action to repeal resolution authorizing the use of excess stadium sales tax funds for economic development and capital improvements adopted on September 20th, 2016.
All right, so we have a motion by Alderman Vanderleest, second by Alderman Tom Slotnick. So we're going to discuss this. This is a committee as a whole action. If I could just, Alderman Slotnick, probably you can explain why it's here.
Thank you, Your Honor. I ask that this be revisited because, as many of you will recall, in August, this council voted 6-6 tie on whether to commit $2 million to property tax relief from the excess sales tax money. And the mayor broke that tie, voting to not commit money to property tax relief. You took that action without having any knowledge of what we faced in the budget. Now we know what we're facing in the budget, and it's creating a significant tax increase on everybody in the city. And so I think it's appropriate that we withdraw that earlier motion and put in a new resolution to devote some of the sales tax money to property tax relief, so we're not hitting people with the property tax increase that they would see if we leave the budget just the way it is.
So the resolution is just to repeal what you did on September 20th. How that money is going to be used is taken up in another resolution, but that's what we're discussing right now. Alderman Scannell?
Thank you, Your Honor. I oppose rescinding. I've heard from many of my constituents once this became public. The reasons for taking this action really don't address the reasons why we made the decision in the first place, that it wasn't fair, that this was a tax that was levied on everyone, not just property owners. That's still true. I think that the fact that we're increasing our tax levy really is a completely separate issue. It really has nothing to do with this. We can use some of that money to offset some capital purchases and so on that will help our budget. But on the whole, I think it's appropriate that we stick with our original decision. That certainly is what my constituents told me, so I oppose rescinding. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Stoyer?
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess the thought, Alder Sladek, I was just going to ask if with the increase that we had at finance, that extra 1.5%, if whatever that number was, if that was taken away, would that change your mind as far as
I'm sorry.
in our budget to bring it back, down? Would that change your thought process as far as how we proceed?
Alderman Slotnick?
So are you asking me if you could cut expenditures in the budget by whatever it was, $600,000 or something that we added? I would think differently about it. I still think it's wrong for this council to, in a year when we've been given a $5.5 million windfall, to raise property taxes. I think that's telling the property taxpayers that you don't matter, that we don't care about you, that we're not gonna share any of this windfall with you. So, but at the same time, I think your question is hypothetical because I don't think you can find $600,000 in spending reductions that the council will support.
Well, let's just say it's those positions that we added.
That won't do it. I think Alderman Slotnick, I just want to tell you that he would prefer zero, and he's not talking about the addition to the Joint Personnel and Finance Committee. You're talking about from day one. And I think that,
Well,
do you understand? I think it's important because I think he has two questions there. Okay. Alderperson Dorff?
Thank you. So I oppose this motion. I was the chairperson of the committee that was to look at the money that was to go to the citizens that wrote the applications for the excess sales tax money. A lot of people put a lot of effort into writing those applications. As a committee, we put a lot of effort into reviewing the applications. This money is a one-time, as you called it, a one-time windfall. To use it to plug a hole in the budget for this year doesn't seem fiscally responsible to me. That hole will still be there next year. So I am not in favor of this. I have heard from many constituents, both email, phone, and also on Facebook, they're appalled. I was shocked by the proposal. I had no warning about this proposal. So I will be voting against this.
All right, thank you. Alderman Joe Moore?
Thanks, Your Honor. Alderman Stoyer, Alderman Slotnick, and myself all came on 5 years ago, and the previous budget was passed 11-1. Alderman Nicholson was the only one that voted to pass that, and against passing that budget. And we've had tight budgets every year since. In fact, that first year, we had a budgetary shortfall that, even caused us to nearly close one of our fire stations to try to get back online. Staff froze hiring positions. We did a lot of things to come out on top that year. And each year since, we've been able to maybe drop a couple pennies on the mill rate or hold it flat, but every budget has been extremely tight. We're complaining about, not being able to keep engineers and get streets repaired. Well, part of that is because over the last 5 years, we've been preventing positions from getting filled and getting hired. And look, Public Works could use a couple more engineers, and obviously we need coverage out in Red Smith. And, this is the year where we've been kicking the can down the road for 5 years, and we finally got caught up with it. There's nowhere else to kick it. This is a tough budget. I don't think anybody likes raising taxes. Some of us will be here, next year thinking about a campaign, and some of us won't for our next election year. But any money that we use now for property tax relief just delays the inevitable a year. We still have positions we need to pay for next year. We still have cost increases we'll be dealing with next year. And it's going to be in an election year for everybody sitting on this council. And I'm not a political person, but I think that means a lot. We do the tax raise this year that we're looking at and try to hold the line now going into the future and bringing it back down again. Look, as far as this tax money goes, and I specifically asked Director Grenier what he would do if he had the money. Sorry.
Wait, go ahead.
So I specifically asked Director Grenier what he would do if he had the money for infrastructure projects. He said he would fix railroad crossings, which they've been doing. He would get lift stations repaired. Flooding has been a big issue in the city that we wanted to address. And he would do street repairs. And I don't think we should pull that money out of that when those are big complaints that we had in this last election cycle, knocking on doors and talking to people. These are things people want to see fixed. The other part, for the $1 million in economic development, again, we're only delaying the inevitable. If we can see these projects come to fruition, it's not short-sighted to put this money toward those projects and to see some growth in those areas and growth in those businesses. Help us down the road, and I would be opposed to taking any of this money and reallocating it. As a matter of fact, I asked for $10,000 to come out of there for City Hall maintenance, and I'll be proposing we put that $10,000 back into the Parks budget later on.
Thank you. Alderman Scannell, did you want to speak to this again? No, there's plenty of lights on, so. Alderman Gaizema.
Thank you, Your Honor. One of the strange things is that, the property tax relief was one of the 3 major uses that were prescribed by the legislature that we should use this money for, that we could use this money for. To date, we haven't put a single penny toward it. Now, at that time, when this originally was voted on, and it was 6-6, it was for $2 million. And I guess some people thought that was too much toward the relief, and then we put that $2 million towards infrastructure. I think we should amend this action to repeal and amend it by, and I'm subject to persuasion about the amount, but I think to repeal 1 million of it and to have that set aside for city budget purposes. Now, it could be $500,000, could be 600,000, whatever anybody thought, but I think it'd be very appropriate to give this tax relief. And these people that say it doesn't benefit everybody, it does benefit everybody that lives in the city of Green Bay, whether you're a renter, property owner. This isn't strictly for just somebody that's a single-family homeowner. Everybody benefits when the taxes don't go up in their properties because the rents don't go up and everything else. So I think we were amiss. And of course, it was a close vote, 6-6, but it was for $2 million. I'm saying let's do 1 million of that. So I'd make a motion.
Alderman Zima, I don't want to interrupt you, but the next motion is the reauthorization where you put property tax relief of up to 1.4 million. Our legal counsel has told me that the first step has to be to repeal the action that we took on September 20th, and that's what we're talking about. The next motion talks about the uses of the funds. And they're,
So
but
we
they're,
can't do 11 before we do 10?
yeah, look, I understand the question, and we kind of talked about this a little bit. Repealing the action frees up the money. Can he amend 10 to repeal and reallocate? I thought that's why we went with two separate
We do have
motions.
to actually free up that funds before we can reallocate it. The problem is that we do have to actually have a specified dollar number that we're applying to each one in the resolution. And in that next resolution, you'll see that we have spent some funds, so we have to leave those ones intact.
Let me ask then, would a proper, hang on, I'll get to your question. Could he amend this and kind of fold in 7? Because we did spend, I forgot the amount was, $11,000.
The proper procedure is to repeal and then adopt a new one in its place.
Yeah. The next motion is the reallocation of those funds. But the first thing we,
So I'll defer to other people. I'd like to listen, but that would be my intention, is to free up a portion of this. Not $2 million worth, but $500,000 to $1 million to apply to our budget this year, and maybe also toward, well, we still have money for capital expenditures, but, you know, we didn't go all the way at restoring our forestry department. We just added one person and one piece of equipment. We could certainly add some more there. So I would like to transfer enough that would buy the things that we feel we need to buy for our city and try to bring in a zero tax rate with this windfall. I mean, Mr. Sladek's words ring out pretty clear. I mean, we're raising taxes when we got a $5.5 million windfall. Give me a break. I have to agree with that 100%. So that's my intention. Are there other lights lit here?
yes, sir, like 7.
I'd like you to recognize me before you
Will do.
go to vote on this.
All right.
I'd listen to other people.
All right. Alderman Vanderleest, the motion on the floor, but they are tied together. This is to repeal the action that we took on September 20th regarding that 0.5% sales tax.
My thought is that, you know, on the economic development part of the tax money, I'm not looking to take that part of the money on the economic development part. I know you went through all the committee meetings and you talked about how much funds this one's gonna get, that one's gonna get. I'm not looking to take that part of the money. I'm looking to take the part of the money that's the 2.8 million that's allocated. I'm looking to take 1.4 million of it and use it for property tax relief, which will help the city overall as a whole. And the rest of it, I'd be comfortable with what we're using it for. And that would be my thought. And I think that, you know, you can sidestep that, you know, you don't want to give it back this and that. But the real issue is, do you want to help the taxpayers? There's over 33,000 parcels. That's business, homeowners, and I think that they're not really looking for no tax increase. My thought is eliminate that tax increase, give them a little bit of break. And I think when we come to our next year's budget, I think we have to look at our budget a little more closely as far as how we can, you know, make cuts. I don't know how the departments handle it if they just come in with a wish list that, you know, we want this. But I think they have to look at it more, how we can help the taxpayers of the city, how we can help the city of Green Bay. And you know, I know you look at your fire department budget, your police department budget, they're huge budgets. Your Department of Public Works, I know they're all needed. But what I'm saying is, if we could, you know, look to make some cuts that, we don't have to do it all this year. You know, like we brought in some new proposals. You know, I think those would be good proposals to bring for the 2018 budget. And I think that would be, you know, a good way to go to move things in the right direction. as far as how we're doing our spending. You know, most businesses that are operating their business, they're looking to, you know, to keep people employed, you know, to keep people paid well. And you know, there's ways of doing it. And how we communicate our, you know, our moving forward. You know, how much money we want to spend. We have a large budget here, and I feel that we can do better. You know, I think all the department heads can do better. You know, there's ways we can drop 500,000 here like with a blink of an eye. And just a matter of how we go about it. And, you know, if we put things off a little tiny bit, that's how I feel about this proposal. And I'd like to see the 1.4 million go back to the taxpayers and all the businesses that are here in the city that are paying all the bills. You look at our school budgets and all the other things that are on our tax bills, you know, you start adding up all the lines, and it's a lot of money that we're paying, you know, right across the board. And I think the counties try to do, you know, their part in you know, not making it go up just as well. So I think the city would be wise to, and if we look at how much our percentage has actually grown across the board, it's less than 1% in the city. Less than 1% as far as how we've, you know, fared economically. So that's my thought, and I think that, you know, be a wise choice to give the taxpayers back some money.
Thank you. Alderman Slack, did you want to say something else on this? You want me to come back later? I got 4 other lights on. All right.
I am not advocating that we go back and move the $2 million into property tax relief. But I do support Alderman Vanderleest's position of looking at 1.4 or whatever's necessary to cut this tax increase. I'd be willing to settle for something less than that. I don't know what that number might be, but to completely turn our back on the taxpayers in a year when we got this windfall, I think is completely irresponsible, and I think we need to rescind this and enact something new.
All right, thank you. That's the motion. Alderman Galvin?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think this council needs to take a long look down the road. Back where we've come from, as Alderman Moore talked about, we had tough times. Departments were told to make cuts. They were told to cut the fat. I think they've gone beyond cutting the fat. Right now, this budget is based upon us not filling $1.1 million worth of positions. I know that the police department table of organization has 194 positions, and they've never been at 194 positions that I know of. We've always been told to hold back. They're running officers short. Are we doing the taxpayers a favor when we continue to short the personnel that they want out there to protect them? Fire, police, keeping their streets updated, their trees trimmed. We heard from the forestry department, they're 9 years behind in trimming trees. Now, is that a huge life and death issue? No, it isn't. But when you have trees obstructing vehicles at intersections or on roadways, you're placing everybody at risk. When you don't have enough officers to answer calls because calls are waiting literally hours on end, day in and day out, because we don't have enough officers out there, are we doing the public justice by doing that? I think we need to start thinking. The times were tough. Everybody sucked it up without complaint. They took the cuts that came along. They didn't replace personnel. They didn't replace equipment. But at some point, you've got to start doing it, or you just keep digging yourself into a deeper hole. And I think we need to look at this budget and just say this is the time to move forward and start getting the budget back up to where it needs to be to support the staff and what this city needs to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Dave Nenning, this is on rescinding the action of the 20th.
Thank you. You know, I think in looking at this, just like in any financial decisions that we make, what's important is to try to look at what will have the greatest benefit to our taxpayers. Now, when you look at capital improvements as proposed here, $2.8 million, economic development, $1 million. You know, those are things that are going to have a long-term benefit to our taxpayers. In fact, with capital improvements or, you know, even capital equipment that might be purchased with the excess sales tax money, those are things that we would otherwise bond for. So by using some of this money, a large amount of this money, to do those things rather than bonding for them, it costs our taxpayers less in the long run, and they're getting a significant long-term benefit. Now, I would not have a problem at some point in considering repealing the resolution in number 10 and reallocating things if we find that there's a better way to do it. But, we created a subcommittee, told them to look at proposals and to come in with their recommendations. They're completing that process, and we'll have that shortly. You look at the budget, and there, throughout the budget, in almost every major department, there's capital equipment that is not funded in the budget. It's slated for consideration with the 2017 bonding. I think those are all things we can look at, but at this time, I'm not going to support the repeal as it's proposed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Tom Dwayne.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Right now, the only suggestion I would make, and I'll tell you why after, is I would hold 10 or 11 till after our budget to see where we are if you really wanted to do something like this. But I tell you, this is my 11th budget, and every year I hear the same thing. Let's wait till 2016. Let's wait till 2017. Let's wait till 2018. We can't do it this year. Other municipalities, since I've been here, have raised their taxes either from 1% to 2.5%. And you talk to the people in those municipalities, they'd rather keep up their services and pay that little bit at a time. If you were to look the last 5 years, if we raised taxes 1%, we'd never be looking at this. People would rather pay a little bit more each year than all this one big jump all of a sudden. For our directors, I can tell you right now, talking to all of them before each budget hearing and hear what they need, they really did hold back. I know Director Grenier, he really held back, and we know we had a long ways to go. But when it comes to doing services, we brought a person for forestry and the truck. That was needed a long time ago. We've already been holding back on that. To say to hold back on the fire department when you got a fast-growing area that can save time from 8 minutes to 5 minutes or even less, the service that does for the community, can you imagine holding that off for another 2 years when they actually need 6 and tell them, well, we could have done better, but we had to wait another year? That's not how you do business. So if we're going to do something and really look at what we're going to do with that tax money that does, I've only had one person tell me that they wanted that tax money, they'd rather use it for infrastructure. And I live in an area that really watches their taxes. After we announced that we were raising taxes, the same people called me. There's 7 of them that call me after every committee meeting. It's like clockwork. None of them mentioned it. They just said, well, what are we using those people for? What are they needed for? 4 out of 5 had complaints about their trees. One is our director promised to go back to his house because they did the whole area and they stopped at the last 2 houses. His was one of them. Now he's eager to get that extra person back on. Never said nothing about the tax raise, but the commitment that we have for our services. I know a lot of people that moved out of our area because they said we had taxes. Every one of them moved back. When you compare services to services, nobody compares to Green Bay. Nobody. Our taxes are higher, but try to compare their services to what we provide for them. Nobody can compare to us. Do I want to raise taxes? I fought as long as every one of you here for the last 11 years to keep the line on taxes, and we've done it some crazy ways. We robbed Peter to pay Paul to get it down every year. But now it's a year we got to do our due diligence, and so Mayor, I don't even know if I can make that motion to.
Well, I'm the one who put this on the agenda at this point. If you guys want to hold these till after the budget.
So we know where we're at?
I mean, that's really up to the council. I put these on in this order, knowing that, do we have this available to us or not? Because I'm not going to pass a budget that's, as they do in Madison, that's a structural deficit. So if we're gonna use this money, I didn't know if the council wanted to make that decision before the budget, if you wanna hold these two items and pick them up after. That's really up to you guys and lady, but I put this on here just to see if this was even an
Well,
option
Your
for
Honor,
us.
I would ask the council right now to, make a, I'll make a motion to hold 10 and 11 till after our budget hearing, so we know exactly where we're at.
All right. So I'm gonna. Yeah, 11, Alderman, is the resolution for, property tax relief of up to 1.4 million. No, it's 11,000. We've already spent that. You guys, let's talk through this, because we got a lot to do today. This is a motion to hold these two items until,
Second.
we have a second on that, we're discussing it right now. Well, did you want to speak on this? Okay, you want an explanation? I'll make it, right? You want?
Go ahead.
Item 10 is a resolution retracting the commitment of the excess sales tax. Item 11 says, let's allocate up to 1.4 million of the excess sales tax to property tax relief. That's what we're kind of debating. Alderman Dwayne said, look, let's just hold these two resolutions until after the budget is done, and then we'll come back and revisit them to see if we want to use any of this money or not. So his motion is to hold 10 and 11. To hold 10 and 11 till after conclusion of the city budget. And that was seconded, and I have a couple more lights on. Alderman Randy Scannell, did you want to talk about this at all?
The new motion?
Yeah, that's what's on the floor, is the motion to hold these two.
I don't have.
Alderman Zima?
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess I don't know why we have item 10 and 11. Can't we just amend 10?
Yeah, that's kind of how we started this, and it was my understanding that we had to rescind 10, and then we could amend it after it was rescinded.
Based on what?
Go ahead.
I had my department look into it, and the proper way to take care of this is to rescind a resolution and adopt a new one.
Well, the problem is, maybe we don't want to rescind everything. That's, I mean, to me, the way I look at it, it means it opens up everything.
That's correct.
Well, I'm not interested. People to move some of it. But that doesn't mean I want to move all, I don't want to further discussion again. Where's that going to take us? Is there making the grass here? Has somebody got some big new idea yet, or what? We battle through this thing, and, but I'm in favor of amending, just to use it for, there's nothing in property tax relief
On the original motion.
in our original resolution.
Give me just 1 second, let's,
Point of information, Your Honor, we don't know what that is yet, so that's why
And
I'm
that's-
asking to hold it.
I get it, he's in favor of holding it, he doesn't want to open up the whole thing. He wants to hold it, knowing that when we come back to revisit it, it will only have to do with property tax, with the budget, and I think, to the best of my knowledge, I would say, yes, sir, that's all that we would do on adopting a new resolution, would apply something towards, what's that?
I wish the chair would take a vote, please. On the motion.
But she was looking to clarify it, really, I think,
It's clarified for,
okay,
good. I'm just asking for a vote.
got it.
Or don't I count?
All right,
You count 10
I,
times.
well, I tell you, dinosaur has a long memory about a lot of things. My sense that we could amend this, and I'm for holding it till the end of the budget hearing, and I think we should, but I want to know if we can, because maybe we'll add a piece of equipment or something for the fire department or whatever, if we know we've got some money to pay for it, and try to take care of some of the needs, the capital needs.
Then why wouldn't you hold 10 and 11 as,
Well, that's okay with me.
okay. Does everybody get the motion? It's to hold 10, 11 till after we do the budget meeting. Alderman Moore, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense to hold it right now if, I mean, we're gonna go into this budget, again, with the argument I made about kicking the can down the road. No matter if we use these funds toward anything toward this budget, it just delays the inevitable a year, and that's all that happens. So I'm opposed to holding this. I'd rather just take action right now.
All right. All right, this is to hold, I want to vote on this because I don't do the board the rest of the day. This is to hold items 10 and 11 till after we come to some kind of direction on the city budget. I'm going to support this. And that passes by a vote of 7-5. So we're holding 10 and 11 until after the city budget. So clerk, let's just get to the city budget. You can take those resolutions and then we'll get to the proposed budget, okay?
We're on to resolutions. You may under suspension of the rules adopt resolutions 12 through 17 together with one roll call vote.
All right, there's a motion by Alderman Joe Moore, second by Alderman Tom DeWayne to suspend the rules for that purpose. All in favor of suspension, please signify by saying aye. And those opposed, nay. Motion by Alderman Joe Moore, seconded by Alderman Randy Scannell. This is resolutions 12 through 17. If you'd use the board on this. I'm going to take a little break before the budget. Okay?
Want me to cancel it?
What's that?
He hit the wrong button.
Oh, we'll just change it internally. That's fine. Okay, we good?
Nope.
Alderman Nenny?
Swearing.
Okay, and that passes, and we'll make the notation of you, Alderman Scannell, that you hit the wrong button. Okay?
Ordinances first reading may under suspension of the rules advance ordinances 18 through 20 to a third reading.
All right, there's a motion by Alderman Joe Moore, second by Alderman Randy Scannell, suspend the rules for that purpose. All in favor of suspension, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion to advance by Alderman Joe Moore, second by Alderman Randy Scannell. All in favor of advancing these first reading ordinances to the third reading ordinance, please signify by saying aye. And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it, and those three ordinances have been advanced.
Ordinances third reading, you may under suspension of the rules adopt ordinances 21 and 22 together with one roll call vote.
Motion to suspend by Alderman Randy Scannell, second by Alderman Joe Moore. All in favor of suspending the rules for that purpose, please signify by saying aye. And those opposed, nays. Motion to adopt by Alderman Joe Moore, second by Alderman Randy Scannell. And use the board on this. This is 21 and 22. Okay, and those pass unanimously. All right. So we're now moving into the proposed 2017 budget, and that's item 23. And we can go through the budget line by line, item by item. I just kind of want to explain this. Then I think at that time it's appropriate to go back to the stadium excess resolutions 10 and 11. When that's all resolved, then item 24 is the resolution to adopt the tax levy. So I think that's the best way to do this so that you know what is coming for the rest of the day. So with that, item 23 is the report of the Joint Finance and Personnel Committee. And I would just ask for a motion, so that's on the table. There's a motion to approve by Alderman Tom DeWayne, seconded by Alderman Mark Stoyer. And anything on here is we can discuss. And just hit your light. If you make a motion, we'll amend it. We'll vote on the amendment, and then we'll go on to the next motion, and then we'll eventually adopt the motion as amended. So if we could begin with Alderman Joe Moore.
Thanks, Your Honor. I've got 5 additional items here that I'd be looking for amendments.
Could I just ask for your indulgence for 1 minute so that Dawn could give you a recap on where we're at regarding expenditure restraint, where we're at regarding the tax levy? I mean, the governor did send down some rules for us, and if we would exceed the levy, that would take a 2/3 vote by this council. But let me tell you where we're at as of the action taken by the Personnel and Finance Committee. Dawn, you want to do that first, and then I'll recognize Alderman Moore.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. I did send out an email last week. We did get our final assessment from the Department of Revenue, and we are at about $6.2 million, down slightly from the 629 that I had, excuse me, 609, about 908,000 from our value that we had in your budget. So that's all final, so we can give you a good mill rate today. Also on expenditure restraint, we are 213,806 under expenditure restraint. But the levy limit is what's playing into our budget this year, and we're $156,507 over our levy limit. It would actually take, we actually have to go to the voters, a referendum, to actually go over this levy limit. So we do need to down underneath our levy limit. And if we hit the 156,507, that is going to take a majority vote of 9 people to vote in favor of using our 2015 carryover levy. And if we go, if that does not pass, there's another level of $262,000. Other value that would just take a simple majority. That I have those things in mind as you're working through some of these items on the budget to make sure we get the right.
All right, I should be clear on this. So we are right now $156,507 over the levy limit. If we want to do that, we would have to go to referendum. However, we can carry forward some of the unused levy limit of last year, but to do that would require a 2/3 vote by this body. And what was the unused levy amount last year?
The maximum unused levy that we can use towards 2017 budget will take $40,066. So in total, our levy would be $53,791,800. Get 9 votes. A simple majority would allow the council to raise their levy 676.
Okay. Does the council understand all that? Those are some parameters. It's a framework of going forward. And, you know, we have a state that we live in, and they set these levy limits and expenditure restraint incentives and programs. And unused levy from last year can be carried forward. Takes 9 of you to approve that. That's another $300,000 if you wanted to do that. But on the other hand, we do have $200,000 under the incentive program, which is the expenditure restraint program. Doesn't mean we have to use it, but there's a little bit of wiggle room there. Do you have any questions for the director? I mean, that's fine. She's. Can I get to Alderman Moore first, and then I'll get to you? All right.
Thanks, Your Honor. And Director Fuller, what is the, there's got to be some kind of a consequence of using unused levy from previous year?
Dawn,
Otherwise, we would just automatically do that, right?
well, no.
Right. I'm just curious what the consequence of using that
The
unused levy would
consequence
be.
of unused levy limit last year, to use that this year requires the 9 votes. Is there any other strings to that?
Once you use
Yeah.
once you use the levy capacity, unused levy capacity, if you use it in 2017, it's no longer available to you. There's other calculations, and there's some, a value from 2014 that could be used, in next year, but there's certain that would be required in order for us to use it. Primarily, that your outstanding debt service, general obligation debt service cannot be higher in 2017 as it is in 2016. That's why we are limited right now that we can only use the 2015 unused levy capacity. Our general outstanding debt did exceed where we were December 31st of 2015. We exceeded that by $1.5 million at the end of 2016. So there's a lot of different rules, but once you use it, you no longer have it available to you. some, the remaining balance, like, let's just say, our maximum that we can use this year is 340, but you choose to only use 200,000, that $140,000 could be used in 2018.
Answers my question,
All
thank you.
right. Alderman Nicholson.
Dawn, where did the money come from?
You had the ability to raise the levy limit in 2016 more than what you actually did. So that's why it's unused levy capacity from. You could have raised our levy in 2016 $1,000, but you chose not to. So they now allow you to use that in future.
Hmm.
Have the ability to, you can have it, 5 years is what they allow in one of the sections.
Accumulating.
Over 5 years, you can carry it forward.
Rolling off where?
It'll no longer be available to you.
Okay. Do you, your professional opinion, should we use it or just let it roll off? No, what is your professional opinion, relying on our finance director?
I don't have an opinion.
You don't have an opinion?
It is
Okay.
your discretion, it is the common council discretion.
Okay,
Okay.
come on, you guys.
Our director has no opinion on, so
All right,
if it rolls
let me get
off,
you.
where does it go?
You can't use it anymore, so we've got this.
Where does it go?
Away.
Oh, it's just a limit.
Right.
Okay. All right. Dawn, you did mention outstanding debt.
Yeah,
Did and it went up this year?
yes,
Increased by how much?
$1,000,005.
What caused that?
We borrowed quite a bit of money in 2016
For,
for our infrastructure, for, project, so there's a lot of,
Okay.
debt that we issued, probably one of our larger.
infrastructure, okay. Thanks, Dawn. I'm done, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Alderman Zima?
I've just got a couple questions, Dawn. How long do carryover funds for levy limit, how long does it last? Just 1 year? Or is it a combination of 3 years, or?
They made a change to the budget, so like this year, you would have available to you 2014 and 15, and so if you don't use all of your levy capacity in 2016, you could have that bill, and there's 5 years is the look back.
And how far were we below for the last 5 years? Or what does it come up to?
In 2000, they actually gave me a percentage, a total of 0.647% below in 2015 and 0.76% below. Those two combined is $739,045.
So that's with a, is it a 3/4 vote or 2/3 vote?
Asked me, I just want you to know that there's two different calculations. The one calculation that I was just telling you on the look back of 2014, not available to the city of Green Bay because of where outstanding general obligation debt is. So going back to, what we can use, it would take a 3/4 vote or 9 votes to use up to 340,006.
Okay, that's what you said originally.
066. And right now.
Okay, so that's our maximum right
So
now.
our maximum, so right now, our levy that we have out there is 53,948. So we are right now 156,507 over our top end of our levy limit, and that's gonna take 9 votes to pass. First, we have to get it down there, and then it'll take 9 votes to pass a budget, using all of our 2015.
Okay, that's the end of my questions, but I've got other discussion.
All right. You understand that, right? We levy, that's a tax thing, 53 million, and we got, what we passed is over that right now. I don't want to dwell on that, but you did ask earlier, and I want everyone to be on the same place, at the same place. Alderman Moore, did you want to comment on this anymore? All right. So, that's the framework. Why don't I get to you now, because you had some motions you wanted to make. And you want to take them individually? I think that would be best. All right.
So these 5 items will get us under the levy capacity. I met with Director Fuller, talked to her Friday, I met with her earlier today to make sure that we could do this. They're not on this. In fact, I've just got notes, and I've got a couple of page numbers written down, but these will all be pretty easy to follow. 4 of these will be pretty easy to follow. The first item came from Joint Finance and Personnel when I asked our Public Works Department to pick up $10,000 in City Hall maintenance. After talking with Director Kramer, that $10K has been very consistently in her budget every year for many, many years, and she would prefer not to have to try to seek that $10,000 next year, with Public Works picking it up out of stadium access this year. So my first motion would be to put that $10,000 back into the parks budget for City Hall maintenance.
All right, so there, I want to be clear on this, because you're making a motion to just new money, or is it a transfer money?
This is to add the money in. I do have something to offset it coming
Okay,
out of the same
but your
budget.
first motion is to add $10,000 to the Parks Department budget for use in City Hall maintenance.
City Hall maintenance, that line item would currently be 0
Yep.
at the recommendation of the Joint Finance Personnel Committee.
And that was a motion by Alderman Moore, and that was seconded by Alderman Dwayne. Alderman Nenning, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, I'm in favor of this. For many years, when I worked for the city, City Hall maintenance was, supervising City Hall maintenance was part of my responsibilities. This is a building repair account. It's really to maintain City Hall. You know, there can be different things from year to year. It could be plumbing repairs, electrical repairs, repairs to the heating and cooling systems, and so on. What was discussed at the Finance and Personnel Committees was to use stadium excess sales tax money from the stadium for that instead of budgeting. And it's really not appropriate, I don't think. This is not something that we would otherwise bond for. It's an ongoing maintenance cost, so I support the motion. I wonder if the easier way of dealing with this might be to make an amendment to the report of the Joint Personnel and Finance Committees. It would be to amend number 3 of that report to eliminate the decrease of $10,000 in City Hall building repairs. I wonder if that wouldn't be easier rather than making other motions.
It's whatever's easier for Director Fuller
Right.
to track this. That's
Okay.
I mean, it's all the same.
Right,
Okay.
what we do is we do have separate columns, one for the joint finance,
Okay.
committee actions, and then another for common council. At the end of the day, you're restoring the $10,000 back to the parks.
All right, so the proper motion is to add $10,000 to the, right, as Joe said, as Alderman Moore said, to add $10,000 to the Park and Forestry Department for City Hall maintenance. I'm gonna take these things on a voice vote. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. All right, Alderman Moore?
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, talking with Director Kramer, we made a couple of adjustments with the forestry budget in her department. One of those, the largest priority being adding a boom truck. And the boom is to add an efficiency and safety. The second priority was a Forester 2, and the third priority was a Forester 1, which we did not pass the Forester 1. The Forester 2 position would not need to be filled until April 1st. And if we delay the hire from January 1st to April 1st, that's going to give us a savings of a little over $17,000, offsetting the City Hall maintenance and then giving us a little bit more cushion in the parks budget. So my motion is to delay the hire of the Forester 2 position to April 1st.
Second that.
All right, you bet. Yeah, I want to do that. So I really don't know if that's your motion. Your motion is to reduce the park and reforestation budget by $17,000 by delaying the hiring of a person.
Right.
That's the motion on the floor, is to reduce it by $17,000. This is kind of a money meeting right now. But the way you're going to do that is to, and that you second that, Alderman?
Yes.
Anybody want to discuss that? So this, again, the motion by Alderman Moore and Dwayne is to reduce the park and forestry budget by $17,000, and we can do that by delaying the hiring of one of the personnel. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Okay, Alderman Moore?
Thank you, Your Honor. At the Finance Personnel Committee, there was no representation from the municipal courts here. And we can add a revenue to municipal courts, that'd be page 207 of the book, of $125,000.
125.
That would be my motion, $125,000 added to municipal court revenue. And again, that was confirmed with our finance director.
And the judge.
Yes.
Second.
There's a motion by Alderman Moore, second by Alderman Scannell, to add $125,000 to the revenue side of the budget, and that's based on municipal court revenues that they're comfortable with. Alderman Zima?
My question would be, how much more is that than the actual collections? What was in our last year's budget, and what have we collected so far this year?
Last year's budget was $1,250,000. When speaking with Lori Paulson from the municipal court, they usually use a 2-year rolling average. They are seeing court citations up, and she felt comfortable with adding $125,000 year to date. Diana, do you have that number? Budget book. On page 207, we projected $1,254,000. They are coming in a little bit higher.
Could you repeat that, please?
And I think Lori Paulson felt comfortable that she could hit 7.5 or 1.4 this year in 2016.
I'm talking about what's been collected so far.
So far in your budget book, we collected $1,189,000, but that was as of October 17th of 2016.
That's $1,000,003.
So they feel that's going to be up to
1.4.
1.375 or whatever next year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. So we have a motion by Alderman Moore and second by Alderman Scannell to increase the revenues in municipal court by $125,000. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. All right, the ayes have it. Alderman Moore?
Thank you, Your Honor. We also, at Joint Finance Personnel, added 2 firefighters out on Humboldt Road to service ambulance in the Red Smith area. Regular fire department recruiting typically occurs in April. If we delayed the hire of those 2 firefighters to when we do our regular recruiting, that would be a savings of $55,000. My motion is to reduce the salaries by $55,000 and hire those firefighters with our regular recruiting.
All right, so we have a motion by Alderman Moore, again seconded by Alderman Tom DeWayne, to reduce the salary in the firefighters' budget by $55,000. And that savings is realized by going with our normal recruiting process. Right? Okay, all in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Alderman Moore?
Thank you, Your Honor. The last item I have is page 205 of our budgets and line 43531, which is state aid for general transportation. We're looking at a decrease on that, and we should be able to add $24,800 in increased aids to this line. So my motion would be to increase $24,800 in the revenues for state aid, general transportation.
All right, so the motion by Alderman Moore, seconded by Alderman Tom DeWayne, to increase the line item of state aids based on new information we got from the state regarding roads. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. All right, thank you. Dawn, want to give us a little, what Alderman Moore has...
Sure, if Alderman Moore, if you wanted to, there's, get another revised number, and that's connecting highway. Right now, we have $650,000, and we're looking at $660, so I'm not sure if you'd like to make that this time.
Take it.
Your Honor, I go ahead and make that motion to add 10,000 revenues to the state aid connecting highways.
All right, there's a motion then by Alderman Moore, second by Alderman Tom DeWayne, to also add $10,000 to the Connecting Highways State AIDS Program based on information that we received from the state. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Let me get a number here. Let me get a number here and then we'll continue.
We would be under, the expenditures range by 275,806 and under our levy limit by 5,293.
Yet, just for the record, we would still have a mill rate increase.
Right, the mill rate would go up 1.96% up to 9.0.
We're at 906.
We're at 906, yes.
And what are we now?
901, 902.
Pardon me? No, it's more than that. From this year? Dawn, the increase in the budget from 16 to 17,
Our levy for operations would go up 1,149,256.
For a zero increase budget, what?
but you can only add 275. Yes, sir. Uh-huh. Yep. Oh, different question. No, I thought you were talking about just revenues. No, so the 886 to 901 is probably $700,000.
About $1 million.
Wait, we're, right now, our tax rate is 886. Every penny increase on that is about $60,000. So if we are going up 15 cents, which is the difference between 901 and 886, right. Well,
You also have to factor in, there is a formula factor for our tips. So it's not a one-for-one, so it'd be $1 million would bring our mill rate down to 885 versus 8.846 2016.
okay. Alderman Dave Nenning.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a couple of things I'd like to put forward. First, I'd like to thank Alderman Moore for the leadership that he showed in bringing these changes forward that we've proposed.
Right.
One of the things that I want to bring up is that at Finance and Personnel, there was a change in the elections budget, a decrease in the seasonal salary account of $22,000. Now, there was discussion at the committee about could we earmark some of the contingency funds to cover that if it's necessary? And I had a chance to look at this since that meeting last week, and I believe that the amount that was requested by our clerk and finance director in the budget is very likely what will be necessary to conduct the elections in 2017. Now, you have to keep in mind that earlier this year, I believe it was in June, we approved increases in the wages for poll workers.
Right.
And at that time, we were told that it would increase the budget by $36,000 roughly for 2 elections. And we're going to have, well, likely have 2 elections next year. Now, the one variable on it is whether there will be a primary required or not. But when you look at the elections that are on the ballot next April, there's state superintendent of schools, there's a state Supreme Court seat, there are 2 seats on the local school board. And I don't think the odds are very good that there won't be a primary in at least one of those races. I would move to put that 22,000 back into seasonal salaries in the elections budget.
All right, so we have I want to be clear on that, right? Do you have a source, or is it levy money? Tell me the $22,000 that you're requesting to add to the budget. Hang on.
Under our levy limit and well under our ERP limit.
So it's levy dollars.
Budget, budget expenditure.
No, I understand. I just wanted to be clear on that. He was talking.
Well, there was discussion at the Personnel and Finance Committee about could you earmark part of the contingency fund to cover that if necessary, and that failed at that committee level. And we're adopting a budget here. I think if we expect that a particular department is going to have that expense, we ought to budget for it, and not earmark contingency when we're first adopting the budget. The contingency account is for unanticipated things that come up during the year.
All right, so there's a motion by Alderman Nenning, second by Alderman Zima, to add $22,000 to the city budget for election purposes. Any lights on that? All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nays. Okay, ayes have that. All right, Dawn, so we're still at the 901, I'm assuming, very close to that.
We're at 9022. This bumps us up.
Okay, so it's $9.02 or $902 versus $886. So that's the levy increase, which equates to about a 1.9% property tax increase. That is where we're at 144. Alderperson Dorf.
Thank you. As I had discussed at the Personnel and Finance Committee, I am going to make a motion to remove the civilian position of Animal Control Officer from the Police Department table of organization and to replace this with a sworn position of an Animal Control Officer and add this to the table of organization. And the cost, I believe, is a little under $20,000, and the police chief might have some ideas on how to offset that.
Again, you're right. The TO is part of our discussion, but this is the budget. So you are requesting to add $20,000 to the police budget to replace the animal control person with a sworn officer. I mean, really, isn't that
Okay.
as a dollar
That's how you
amount? I
say
mean,
it.
I'm happy to talk to
Okay.
the chief, but I need to get something with a dollar amount on the table.
Yes,
And is the amount 20?
put 20. Yeah, I think it's
19685.
19,685.
All right, so there's a motion by Alderperson Dorf, seconded by Alderman Tom DeWayne to add $19,685 to the police department budget, and that expense comes due to the removal of the civilian and putting in the sworn officer position for animal control. Alderman Dorf, do you have anything else you want to say about that?
No, I think we discussed it quite a bit, and
Okay.
I think this would be an important thing for the person's safety, and if someone was not available to go out on the call, it seems now we're needing to send an officer out anyway, so it might be more efficient.
All right, so the motion on the floor again is to add $19,685 to the police budget. Got 4 lights on here. Alderman Nenning, was your light?
I have something else after this
Okay,
issue.
I'll get back to you in just a second. Alderman Joe Moore on the 19.
Thanks, Your Honor. I don't know that this is the right budget to change this position. It's It's been a civilian for many, many years. I don't know that we've ever had any problems with it. And in a budget that's this tight, I don't know if it's the right time to make the change. You know, if there was something out there that really constituted a change, we should look at it a lot closer. And it's something we can look at during the year as well. But at this point, I wouldn't support putting $20,000 more in after working so hard to make cuts. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Nicholson?
Alderman Dorff stated there that the chief is going to offset this. I'd like to hear that, please.
Chief Smith, we're discussing the reclassification of the civilian to a sworn officer regarding animal control, which increases your budget by $20,000. Alderman Nicholson is asking, are there any ways we can offset this expense?
Sir, we could offset this similar to what the fire department's doing by delaying hiring that person and not filling that position until sometime later in the year when we've made up the just under $20,000. That way we'd be able to fill it. If we were to fill it with a civilian person now, it might be years or even decades before we have the other opportunity to do this again. And I really feel, and I think many other folks would agree with me, that because the safety concerns of a person going into other people's houses, taking their animals away, conducting investigations like that. I really like the idea of a sworn person doing it, someone who's armed and someone who's been trained in how to handle situations like that. Again, if we delayed filling that position for a number of months, and certainly towards the summer, we'd be able to fulfill that $20,000 gap.
Point of information, Your Honor.
Right.
You got a date so we know we can put it in right now?
$3,000 a month?
Will be April 1st like everybody else?
Usually hiring just by, 3 months, that would cover it.
So April? April 1st would be the time.
Dawn, can you get a bigger number on that? So then I think that'll.
Well, I think that's zero effect on the budget.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So, we'll,
That should be in the motion.
we'll allow the amendment. The amendment is, let me think here. The amount is to reduce the police budget by $19,685, and that amount is offset by the delay in hiring of this sworn officer position, therefore having no effect on the proposed budget. Everybody agree with that? That's what we're doing. Okay. So that's the motion and the second. Alderman Zima, did you want to speak to that? Okay.
I certainly don't agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to be without an animal control person? What, it's empty right now because somebody retired? Is that it?
Yeah, hang on. Chief Smith?
Sir, I agree with you. That's a critical position that I don't want to leave empty. Right now, I have an officer, a sworn officer in there as a temporary assignment, doing the duties. This officer was previously trained as an animal control officer, having been an animal control intern, and is doing the job right now and will continue to do that, leaving that animal position, that animal control civilian position vacant until we fill it. So we basically robbed a person out of our patrol hide to fill that spot, sir.
All right, thank you. Alderman Tom Slavic?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Alderman Moore that we have not had any difficulties with these duties being performed by a non-sworn person, and I don't think this is the year to be increasing our expenses.
All right, thank you. Alderman Galvin?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think the police department, if you were to ask them for some statistical details, would give you quite a few calls for service in which the animal control officer went to it and then end up having to ask for an armed officer as a backup because of the situation she found herself into. Many times, I think it's simply a dog call, and it turns into being a home where there's drugs, gang-related people, and neighborhood disputes that escalate that person is not equipped or trained to handle. So I think if you were to look at the amount of times they've had to have an officer back them up, you would realize we're better served by having an armed officer handling that position in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Tom Dwayne?
Yeah, I gotta agree. I think it's very important. I know many, many times, and we discussed this at length, how important and how many times officers, it's probably 90% of the time. And I don't think I'm very far off if I'm off at all, that an officer had to call out. I can verify myself, calling Captain Galvin, when he was our district captain, enough times where, they had to respond on a situation like this when the animal control officer was not answering or was on the way, but did not respond in time. So I think it's really important. I support this wholeheartedly. I've seen it many, many times, and Captain Gill has helped me many, many times on different situations. So I think this is the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Dorf, okay, if you just hit your cancel button. Alderman Slotnick, did you want to speak again on this? All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question for the chief. How many animal-related calls do we dispatch an intern to? What percentage of animal calls are responded to by an intern as opposed to the animal control officer?
Number of calls that our interns handle. We have 2 interns that are 10 hours a week each. They work the hours where the animal service person is not assigned. So they do respond out in the evenings when the animal service person is not available. But I don't have a breakdown of number of calls that they handle per day.
Seems to me like if this is a service that we'll dispatch an intern to, we're not doing anything reckless by having a non-sworn person in the animal control officer position. And we're exposing interns to these calls. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do you want to talk about this again?
No.
Okay. Right. Alderman Nenning, did you want to speak to this?
I would just want to say one quick thing, that I believe that if we're going to make a change, if it's desirable to make a change, it's most appropriate to do it at the time when a vacancy occurs. You know, I'd hate to fill it at a civilian level and then a year or 2 from now find that that really isn't working, and then what do you do? So, you know, I know it's biting the bullet now, but I am convinced by the argument that it would be more effective to have a sworn officer respond on those calls. You know, perhaps citizens will take it more seriously so that we won't have repeat calls about particular animals. I think the cost is relatively small considering the benefit that we'll be getting. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, the motion on the floor, there is no cost, because the chief is going to keep his person in there till April, and in April we'll hire the sworn officer, which, like I said, equates to probably a $65,000 salary, so he's going to delay that hiring. Alderman Zima?
Thanks. I hear different stuff bantered around here. I want to ask the chief directly. Our president, if I heard him correctly, he said that 90% of the calls to the animal control person has to be backed up by police officer. Is that correct?
I said that.
Alderman Dwayne said that.
I said that.
Yeah, you said that. That's what I'm saying. I want to hear that verified, if that's true. I know where you get your numbers sometimes.
Sir, I'm sorry, I don't have a breakdown of the number of backups that our officers respond to, our animal services officers. But we do have our CSIs, and when our CSIs or when our interns respond, typically an officer will roll by the scene just to make sure that the officer is okay.
Okay,
I don't know. I find that an outstanding statement, that 90% of our animal control calls are backed up by police officers. I think that's ridiculously, absurdly exaggerated. I don't know where our president comes up with some of these things sometimes. He just gets on bandwagons and he just says some, what I think are pretty ridiculous things. I don't think it's anywhere near that. I'd be surprised if it was 10%. Now, that doesn't, it's still, I'm willing to listen to arguments about making a sworn officer, but again, somebody brought it up. Is this the place where we're going to be deciding that? I think it's something good for discussion. If he can fill it without it, we don't even have to talk about it here at budget time. It's not a motion that's appropriate for here.
well, with the offsetting revenue, you're right.
So I don't know. I think we should move on. I'd like a more direct answer from our chief of police. Are you saying that, are you concurring with our president that there's 90% of the calls? Because if that's the case, I'm all in favor of it. Why would we be wasting our time with a civilian?
Chief, you got a couple captains behind you kind of shaking their head. I do have a number, close, I mean, I'll give you 20% leeway.
Sir, honestly, I have not done the research
Okay.
into the number of calls. It would only be anecdotal from what I see or what other people see in the
All right.
field.
Okay, sorry, Guy.
It's one of these cow jumped over the moon deals. I really,
Well, we don't need an animal control person for that.
okay. That's a good one, I like that.
Thank you. You walked right into it, so, okay,
Well, so I'm not in favor of doing it at this time.
all right. Alderman Dwayne,
Your Honor, when Sharon Hanson was the animal control officer, and Alderman Zima knows that, more often than not, she had stated to us that more times than not, she had to call a police officer. My experience with her, she always did this in my district. And so that's where I got the numbers, and if she was here today, and the officers that know her, she often called for backup.
all right,
So-
thank you. Alderman Weary, Alderman Chris Weary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rode along several times with Sharon Henson, Animal Control, and we never called the police, at least on those. And I think she would probably disagree with it being changed to a sworn, but that's just in my conversation with her. But I'd like to hear those arguments, so I don't think this is the time to change. I'd like to go through personnel and fully vet it and see the pros and the cons, so I'm gonna vote against it, thanks.
I don't know if this is right to have here, Counselor. This is not a budget item. The chief is going to go to personnel and ask for a sworn officer. If we approve the budget as is, you have the money, you would just delay in the hiring until April.
Correct.
I don't know. I would agree with that. All right. Okay, so we have a motion, and a second to refer this item to the Personnel Committee to discuss and then to come back with the TO sometime in 17. This is on referral. Alderman Weir, did you want to speak to that? Okay. Alderman Vanderleest?
I support that referral.
Okay.
We need a little more discussion on
Yep.
this, and we
Thanks.
can iron it out at a later time.
All right, so seeing no other lights, there's a motion, a second to refer this particular item to Personnel Committee. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Okay, we're back to the budget. Any line items? Alderman Netting.
Your Honor. One thing that was done here at the Personnel and Finance Committee was to reduce the Packer overtime account in the police budget and to reduce the revenue in the revenue budget by a like amount. Now, that was basically an accounting change to help the city comply with the ERP limit. It has no effect on the levy or on the tax rate. And I guess I believe that obviously we need to meet both our levy limit and our expenditure restraint program limits. But currently, we're probably $250,000 below the ERP limit. And unlike shared revenue, the levy limit, with expenditure restraint, there's no carryover from year to year. So if we go $250,000 below the ERP limit in the 2017 budget, that becomes the basis on which our 2018 ERP limit will be calculated. So I guess with things as they are here, I think our goal should be to meet the ERP limit, but not to exceed it by that large of an amount. So I guess the motion I would make would be to remove to add back the $245,000 to the police overtime budget as well as to the revenue account.
Bucks, okay, second. So You guys understand? Okay, it's,
Yeah, if
it
there are
just
any-
gives you more leeway for next year.
Yes, if
It
there are any
did-
questions about that, I'd be happy to answer it, but it was basically an accounting change to help us meet the levy, the ERP limit, and as things have shaken out here, it's not necessary. So I would prefer that we not do that to give us more leeway in moving to the 2018 budget.
So what was the number? To add 245,000, is it 240 or?
245 to both the revenue and the expense. Is that okay, Don?
All right. It
Yeah,
does.
it's a
just-
wash.
Okay, Dave. Alderman Moore, did you want to speak to that? Alderman Vanderleest, did you want to speak to that? This is, okay, right. So there's a motion, a second, to increase expenditures offset by revenues of 245,000. Just all in favor of that, please signify by saying aye. And those opposed, nays. Okay. Alderman Moore?
Yes, Your Honor, I had another amendment here that I skipped over, forgot to write down, but 2000, this would be line 59001 on page 156, which is under our miscellaneous budget in the budget book. Line 59001 is in regard to the contingency fund. Our actual expenditures in 2015 were zero. In 2016, we just allowed $3,300 tonight that we approved, and which would leave us, we budgeted $58,000 for that last year. And for some reason, the 2016 projection is $110,000. So if we're looking at spending another $106,700 out of contingency in the next 6-7 weeks, I'd be curious about that. If not, I would move that we amend the 2017 budget from $110,000 back to $60,000 as we've done in the past. That'd be my motion. Reduce by $50,000.
Let's just get it on the floor. All right, so that's seconded by Alderman Tom DeWayne. Dawn, this is reducing our contingency budget by $50,000. Alderman DeWayne has a question, as do I. Is there something coming?
Right, so we actually did use, I believe it was $50,000 earlier this year on the officer vehicles. We also have, there's items out there for as to whether or not we're going to expand voting. That's an option for 2017, as well as a comp study that we have, that we have, with a third party to bring forward dollars would come from. In 2000, for the 2016 budget, we intentionally dropped it by $50,000, knowing that we had a surplus from 2015 and we restored it back up. That's why you see that difference, and you'll never, how could you budget for it underneath that line, but you always move it out to wherever the contingency is needed. So, for instance, when we needed money for the SRO vehicles earlier this year, we reduced the budget for, and we moved it over to the fund that will actually purchase those cars. So you'll never see a charge against it, it's just, in case things happen. This is a pretty low value for a city our size. I shouldn't say many, but they'll put it at a 1% budget. And this is pretty low. I don't even know how the decimal point would go.
Two.
Things that are unknown, but the things that are known for 2017 are the comp study. There is, one more, there's one more that I think, that our safety manager is doing this year, is an ADA study on all of our facilities. Over at Lynn, it's a meeting that we had, so, study that we need to do, I'm not sure what that. Things are unknown.
I'll pull back my motion, but I think that it would be nice in future budgets here to have a line item list of what that contingency is gonna be.
Well,
We know it.
we do, but contingency, I just remember Alderman Nicholson one time, we did the contingency in the police department for rapid action team or something, and I know that came out of contingency, and as she said, 50 million levy. There's some communities, not all, but do put 1% in, which would be 500,000. I think we budgeted 106. I mean, I'm just want you to know that you're right. If you don't use it, it's like, why do you have it? But if you knew where you're going to have it, it should be in the operating budget.
Your Honor, after hearing it, I'll pull my second.
Okay. So Alderman Moore has, okay. All right, Alderman Vanderleest? Did you have anything for the budget you wanted to discuss at this time?
Just about my earlier comments, what we were talking about on 10 and 11, that would be later.
That's going to be later, sir. Mhm.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Alderman Zima?
Are we off of the contingency fund then?
That was both
Well, I
pulled.
just make a comment that contingency fund should be at least 100,000.
Yeah.
I mean, you ask families to keep emergency budgets of a 3-month salary or something, this is nowhere near it. But I mean, it seems to me emergency is emergency, and you never know what it's gonna be, and I think that's a very minimal amount.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. Dawn, where are we at?
So right now, we are $8,806. We are our levy limit by 43,000,
And what is our tax rate look like?
and our tax rate is 9.0, or a 2% increase.
And the total amount of that increase is what?
Our levy will go up $1,171,256 for operations.
Okay. 2. 1.1, she said. Yes.
That's 1,020,020, we'll bring you back down to 80.
1 or 1 0? Tell me that exact dollar amount. Okay, $1,020,000 would bring us to a 0% increase. Okay. Alderman Nicholson?
Question, last year's budget, I remember, I asked you, Mayor, where we could raise more revenue. And there was some surplus land that Dawn offered. Is there anything like that?
Yes, so there's a couple, right, we have a levy, which is a fixed amount, and then we have a few variables, parking tickets, not to mention the least, but it's the revenue that we get from our court system, which we just increased today, and land sales. And I'll have Director Vonk speak to land sales, because we talked about that at length. Where we're at this year, we're gonna exceed that, and then what you're looking for next year.
Sure. To Alderman Nicholson's point, this year we had budgeted $500,000. We hope to achieve that with the sale of Erie Road property and another additional parcel nearby in the I-43 Park. We also put in $500,000 for next year. That would be the other half of the Erie Road parcel. Beyond that, I don't see us getting much beyond that $500,000. We're at the point where we don't have a lot of surplus land. We have some smaller parcels here and there, but in terms of large tracts for industrial development, we're on our last piece right now.
Is it already in the budget?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
500.
Yes.
Okay, so there's
I think we pushed it as far as we can.
no, okay. I thought I heard a number of 275. About a half an hour.
Is that related to municipal court?
All I heard was revenue.
Right, you did. You heard that correctly. That was revenue. That wasn't 275, it was 125. We are increasing the revenues brought in by our municipal court system.
Is that already in the budget?
We just amended that and added another 125,000.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Your Honor?
Just let me get to Joe. What do you wanna hear?
If nobody else has anything further, I think we know exactly what we need, the 1.1 million to come to even.
I don't know if this time you wanna come back to 10 and 11.
Okay, it's, first of all, it's 1,020,000.
1,020,000.
It's not 1.1.
Yep.
I do have another question about
Yep.
the budget if,
That, like, Alderman Moore's light is on. Let me do that, and then I'll get to you.
Wayne had the floor.
That's it.
Didn't know he was on.
Alderman Moore?
Yeah, Your Honor, you mentioned parking tickets. Was there a possibility of a revenue increase?
Ooh, man, that's not a vote getter, but I don't know. I can talk to Alderman Grenier. Where are we with revenue on parking citations? I mean, Director Grenier.
Well,
I'm just
because they're in parking, they have no net effect on tax levy. That goes into parking.
All right, that was just a bad joke, Alderman Moore. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. We did. Okay, Alderman Nicholson.
Was Alderman Moore finished?
He is.
Okay, I know in the past, we gave the neighborhood associations money. Are we giving them money again this year?
Yes, there's money in the miscellaneous budget.
Okay, and the reason why? And how much?
I'm gonna defer to the planning or community development, and there is $10,000 in the budget, same as what we had in the 2016 budget.
2015 was what, 20?
2015, we spent $13,566.97.
When we started this, it was 20, so basically we're out, correct?
I think it was 25.
Budget for 2016 and 17.
Well, okay. So, okay, just need the amount and why.
Cheryl, did you want to speak to the why? The amount, are you clear on the amount? $10,000 and the why, Cheryl?
Well, we have 10,000 budgeted. We actually have it obligated this year, so we're making the drawdowns now, but we actually couple this with 10,000 from the Leadership Council, the private dollars. We award this money every spring for various neighborhood projects. 21 neighborhood associations receive dollars, so it's a good project. We can get a lot of things done that we don't have to, through our Leadership Council backing, we don't have to use it all the city money.
How much is from the city then?
It's 10,000 from the city, and then we match that through private dollars, another 10,000, so there's 20,000 to spend.
I can't remember what year when Mary put 25,000 into the budget for this.
Yeah, 4 years ago, maybe? Do you want 25? What do you mean? Yeah, I'd say
Well,
4 years ago.
I just wanted the mic on, that's all.
Oh.
But how long ago was this? 6 years ago?
I think it was 4.
And when, Mayor, when you when you started this program, it was a great program. It got neighbors involved, but you did state not one red cent from taxpayers would be in this program, and I said this 4 years ago also. And it does bring people together, but one thing, why should the city spend any money in this? Not everybody benefits from this. Not everybody participates. It's basically a select group that want to volunteer and do this. And kudos to them. That's excellent. We need volunteers like this, but I still believe that we do not need public dollar into these programs. So I want to make a motion to delete the $10,000.
Okay, I just want to say, Alderman, it does help us leverage private money, but that's why it's in there, and I'll accept that motion. So there's a motion to delete $10,000
Maybe
from
we
the.
can get more private money.
I understand. There's a motion by Alderman Nicholson to delete the $10,000 in the budget for the neighborhood associations. All right, I'm sorry that dies for lack of a second.
Just want to say thank you to my colleagues.
All right. Alderman? We will. What I'd like to do is, right, and I'd like to return to item 10 with an exact dollar amount, because I think that's going to be important. I want to make sure, if I could just confirm that. It could have been. Dawn, what is the dollar? I understand that the budget, that we're looking at that we've discussed this afternoon is both under the expenditure restraint program and also under the levy limit. What is the exact dollar amount to the penny that we're looking at increasing? No, I want to know.
8,806 on expenditures. 43,293 under the levy limit.
For a,
For a mill rate of 902, 2% increase.
and the exact dollar amount of that increase.
1,171,256.
How come you just said it was $1,020,000?
Because you do have to account for some growth there, so levy for that growth, and that equals about $100,000.
Why wouldn't that growth offset our revenue?
You added the growth as far as increasing your assessed valuation of your property.
Right.
So that does allow you to grow your levy, about $150,000 without impacting the tax rate.
So really the tax rate, sorry you guys, is $150,000 over that, or that's factored in? Because we're gonna have growth next year. All right, so the tax increase we're getting, less the growth rate, we would have to levy an additional $1,171,256. I want that number. That is the amount that we would have to additional levy to our residents and businesses, property taxes. 1.1 million? Okay. No, I think this is, she's not Mike, she's had one all day.
I don't understand the question, otherwise I'd be able to answer it.
Fine.
How much do we have to put take from the excess factor tax to have a zero increase?
That's the question. I think it's,
1,020,000 would
okay,
bring our mill rate
that's
back
the
down to
number I was looking
8.5.
for, because we had growth. Okay. All right. Thank you. All
Others, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to go back to 10 and 11.
right, so Alderman Dwayne is making a motion that we return to items 10 and 11, seconded by Alderman Stoyer. So we're going to suspend the budget hearing right now, and the motion and second is to return back to items 10 and 11 in your packet. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. And those opposed, nay.
Your Honor, I would like to yield to Alderman Van der Leest.
All right. Alderman Van der Leest, you have the floor now, and we are back to both items 10 and 11. So I'll give you some leeway on both of those. One is rescinding the action taken, the other one is amending the amount of the stadium tax dollars.
Okay. My amendment would be to take the $1,020,000 and have a 0% tax increase for the city of Green Bay. I believe that would help the taxpayers immensely, business and private. And I think it shows that the council is willing to work with the citizens who are paying our bills.
Second.
All right.
Your Honor, if I may ask, John,
Go ahead.
earlier you said you wouldn't take another economic part of it, but so that would come out of the infrastructure.
That's correct.
So I want that stated as such, if I can.
That's the way we want it.
Okay.
We won't be messing with all the fine print as far as different organizations we're gonna be giving money to. It'd be come out of the development part of it.
You come out of the capital improvements part, the 2.8 million.
Yes.
All right, is there anything else, Alderman Van der Leest? Hang on, you guys.
I just hope that the council will get behind this proposal. And,
All right.
that's my proposal. and
Thank you. Hang on. So Alderman Van der Leest has just made a motion regarding resolutions, kind of 10 and 11 together, in that right now, what you have passed was $1 million towards economic development. Those are the different projects, and then 2.8 toward capital improvements. His motion is that we take $1,020,000 out of the capital and improvements excess stadium tax funds and apply that toward the budget, net increase to the taxpayers of zero. And anything else? Okay.
Who seconded it? Somebody.
Alderman Zima seconded that. Alderman Dave Nenning?
I just have a question for clarification. Are we just putting that amount in the budget as a revenue line? Or so it would reduce the rate for all classes of property in the city? Or are we, we had talked about earlier, a few months back, about sending everybody a check, that sort of thing. I think we learned in the process that you can't put it as a line on the bottom of the tax bill as a reduction. So how are we going to do this?
What Alderman Vanderleest is proposing is inserting a line, we would use excess sales tax, which would bring down our levy, and our mill rate would then be $8.85.
Okay, Alderman Nenning. Alderman Nicholson?
Thanks, Mayor. So that's the magic number, 1,020,000, Dawn?
Yes, it would, our mill rate for 2016, just so you, it's 885 rounded, it's 8.8. 16, it's 8.8516 for 2000. Is that close enough, guys?
It's got to say zero.
Okay, let me just make it small.
So will that say zero?
That's why I wanted to.
Hang on.
Ask
Okay.
the question.
That was my follow-up.
It's $1,050,000 will bring you to the exact same mill rate as we had in 2000 and.
So an extra 30,000 then, Dawn,
Yes,
from the motion?
yes.
And Mayor, who made the motion?
Alderman Vanderleest?
Can you amend that to 50,000?
He just did, and Alderman Zima seconded it,
Okay.
and he approved that.
Hey, Johnny on the spot.
They are.
Okay. Question, the economic projects, are those already passed and?
Nope, that is coming back to you. I think you passed something today that, earlier, that these projects are gonna come back to the council. When are you guys bringing those? The recommendation's gonna come to the next finance meeting, so you'll see that, on the 6th.
Okay, and then how much money is segregated for the economic projects?
$1 million.
Million. Okay. All right, thanks, Mayor.
All right. Alderperson, let me go, get these in order. Alderman Moore? On the motion by Alderman Vanderleest.
Thanks, Your Honor. I understand trying to keep this flat, but what we're doing, again, and I said it before, is kicking the can down the road. Next year, we need to come up with more than $1 million, and we know that starting at day one, that we need to come up with more than $1 million to keep the mill rate flat next year, and that's before any other staffing issues, any pay raises from the studies we're doing, any other cost increases that might come across to the city, any other capital things that we need to buy. And what we're doing, so we delay it a year for what will very likely end up being a tax increase. I mean, I can't predict that. But we're pulling this away from projects like railroad crossings, lift stations, and street repairs. So we're just delaying a year, and we're not gonna get that work done. I'd rather just see this work get done and be done and use the $1 million toward that. I mean, for even, Alderman Weary's sake with Colburn Pool, I mean, this is capital improvement infrastructure projects. A parking lot out at Colburn Pool, I would consider to be an infrastructure project and something that the money could be applied toward. We're pulling money away from sidewalk slabs that we talked about last year, about 40-some thousand sidewalk slabs in the parks that needed to be replaced. There's curb cutouts all over the city from where houses have been raised, where the cutouts are still there and not repaired. There's a lot of things that this money can go toward that will benefit everybody. We're gonna move $1 million to benefit around 25,000 people here, and then the money is gone, and none of these repairs are made. I can't get behind doing this. There's gonna be a tax increase in our future. I think we gotta bite the bullet and just do it. Look, I never would ever envision myself fighting for a tax increase, but I just think it's an absolute waste of what everyone's calling a windfall to do a one-year Band-Aid.
Okay.
Thank you.
You understand there's 1.4 million left, though, in the capital improvement budget? Okay, I just want to make it sound like it's all gone. Alderman Bill Galvin?
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with Alderman Moore. We keep pushing these things off. If you're repairing your home and you keep putting off repairing that home, the costs just go up. If you offset it with a one-time fund like that, we're gonna have to bond for these projects further on down the road. This saves the taxpayers actually money, I think, going forward, by saving us from having to take out bonds, paying interest on these things. And I think we just need to get the work done. That's what the people have been asking for. They've been asking to have these things done. And they don't want to keep waiting and waiting and waiting because we don't want to increase taxes. I think they all understand at some point in time, your taxes do have to increase. Just like taking care of your home. Sometimes that increases, and you have to be willing to step up and do it the right way. And I think by taking this money away for a one-time thing like this is going to hurt us more in the long run. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Nicholson? You don't have anything to say? All right. Alderperson Dorf?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to say thank you. I do appreciate that you were not talking about taking the $1 million out of the economic development projects, and I am grateful for that. And at the same time, I can't support taking the money out of the capital improvement and infrastructure. The work is not going to get any less expensive by putting it off. We'll have more money in there to get that work done sooner, and in that way, I think we'll be saving taxpayers money. And in talking with my constituents, they want services. They understand that this means a tax increase at times. So I can't support putting that money into property tax relief at this time.
All right, thank you. Bob, you turn your light off. Alderman Zima?
Well, I didn't realize it was on yet, but thank you, Your Honor. I'm always happy to talk, especially on such an interesting subject. You know, you talk about pushing payments off down the road. Well, something else we've been pushing off is closing TIF districts that have been fully paid for some time and using that money in unsuccessful TIF districts. And I tell you, if we did a little something to put more on the tax roll, we'd have a lot more taxpayers to help share the costs. And I really think we can increase our tax base by doing that in the future. But that's a different subject. But I'm going to move back. You know, $2 million was asked for tax relief. That is one of the three major requests that we're allowed to. It was economic development, property tax relief, and debt reduction. Well, not one penny has been put to it at this point in time, as I said a little earlier. This is a compromise from $2 million down to $1 million plus. And it gives us zero, and I think we have ways to increase our tax base to cover these without having to kick anything down the road. So I'm 100% in favor of it. I have had calls. I will not exaggerate, as some of our famous aldermen do here. I didn't get 1 million calls. I didn't get 100,000. I didn't get 1,000. But I did get, you know, a handful of people that felt like 2% increase would hurt them. They're on fixed incomes and stuff like that. So I think it's appropriate use for it. I think it fulfills the promise of what the legislation allowed us to do. And I think it's the one thing we didn't do anything about. And I think this is, and I don't know where you get only 25,000 people benefit. Everybody in the city benefits from less taxes on their property, whether they rent or they own or run a business. So I'm 100% in favor of this motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Slotnick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Alderman Zima, particularly on his point that there are opportunities in the future, perhaps with TIF districts, to expand the revenue coming in from areas that right now we don't get that revenue. And I also agree that that's a separate topic, but it's something I think we need to keep in mind when people say that that there's no hope in the future other than even bigger tax increases. I'd also like to say that maybe there's a remarkable geographic difference between the East and the West, because unlike Alderman Dorf, my constituent contacts are uniformly do not raise taxes. And I've heard that message a lot since last Tuesday when the news broke about how much we were contemplating raising the taxes. So I support Alderman Vanderleest. I think has been very reasonable. He's only seeking less than 20% of the total amount that we got in excess sales tax revenue. And I think that's reasonable, and I support it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Weary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been consistently for giving some stadium tax money back to taxpayers, and I've voted that way all along. However, what's different here is we're purposely creating a rather large hole deficit for next year, $1 million just to start out the year. Happy New Year, you're $1 million behind already. That's scary. I mean, that gives you a sick feeling right in your stomach to know you're creating that gap. And I know why we're doing it, but I would rather take a separate measure and give people checks back as a separate portion to offset it. But I really don't want to create that structural deficit. So I can't support it, at least right now. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Alderman Clark, did you have anything else to say? Or Alderman Vanderleest, did you have anything else to say? Okay, hang on. Let me get your light.
I'd like the council to remember where this tax money came from. We wouldn't be talking about this money right now if it hadn't been for the stadium tax that came back to our city. And the people, the city of Green Bay, we had this amount allotted, and it's over, I forget the exact figure, Dawn could give us the exact figure. But we wouldn't be talking about this money, it wouldn't have been even on the table. And I feel that we can give a little of this money back. And I believe you'll support it, Mayor, as well.
I believe you're right.
And I think that our council, kind of forgets, where did the money come from? All the citizens of Green Bay that paid it in and throughout the whole county. And we did some good work with that money. And I think that we can, this is excess money. So let's give a little something back to the taxpayers and to the businesses. And I've been a businessman most of my life. It isn't all take. You got to give something back. And that's how I feel. Give this money back. And I thank you, Mayor, for supporting it.
That's it for lights. Right. I just want to make sure I have the proper motion on the board, Vanessa. There's two things we're talking about. Alderman Dwayne pulled both 10 and 11. One rescinds, and then can I just amend item 10 and then dispose of 11?
Let's amend 10 and we'll receive and place on file number 11.
Okay. If we amend item 10, it's to, instead of resolution repealing, it would say resolution amending the authorization of the sales tax, and it would say economic development, $1 million, 2017 budget, $1,020,000, in capital improvements, $1,800,000.
So Mayor, if I may. We do have to change the way it's worded. So you'll notice that top part where we were referring to the numbers that were apportioned, it's saying that was what was authorized. And so we do need to incorporate the language from the following one, from item 11, which would bring that back in. But yes, we can do it that way. I have no problem with that, but we do have to bring that language back in. This is not as clean, but we can do it this way.
Or we could take 11 first because that's already authorizing the use. See what I'm saying?
Receive and place on file.
Okay, you guys, I want to get this, we're going to take a vote in just a minute, but I need to make sure this is right. Alderman Vanderleest is amending item 10. And there's two amendments. It goes from a resolution repealing to resolution amending. So cross out repealing, write amending. And whereas the stadium tax funds will be amended as follows, and it's going to say economic development, $1 million. It's going to say 2017, what do we put, budget? Right, but I want to know how, towards 2017 budget.
Mayor, we actually need to keep it, with the categories they gave us, so it doesn't need to say property tax.
Oh, property tax relief. And okay, and the remainder to capital improvements. Mhm. You okay with that, Alderman Vanderleest? That's kind of your amendment. Okay. Everybody understand the amendment for item 10? And then, okay. We're amending item 10. Item 10 was something we passed back in September of $1 million towards economic development, $2.8 million towards capital improvement. Alderman Vanderleest and Alderman Zima are, the resolution is to amend the authorization, the action that you took, whereas economic development will be $1 million. Property tax relief will be $1,020,000, and the remainder to $1,050,000, and the remainder to capital improvements. If you pass that and we go back to the budget, that would be a zero impact on the tax rate. But we're not going to approve a budget unless we have the money, and this would give us that money. So that's what's on the board right now. And if you would use the board. Right, Tom? Right. So it's a tie. Those are the results. Look, I think this is appropriate. Look, I'm hopeful going to be here for next year's budget, and I understand what we're doing. What's that?
Let's just stick to this. Let's just stick to this.
I am saying that this isn't a Band-Aid, that this is going to make us work a little bit harder, and a little stronger, and I'll count on it. Regarding Resolution 11,
Motion to receive and place on file.
it's a resolution to receive and place on file, item 11. Chris, can you clear the board? We're voting on receiving and placing on file item 11.
We already have a.
We do, we're good. Listen to that asshole. Yeah.
Nothing needs to be done.
No. Okay, and that passes unanimously. All right, we are back to the.
No, we gotta go back to the.
No, that's, he's right. No, we just suspended that. We can do that. We're done. We're back to the budget, to the proposed 2017 budget. All right, There's a motion by Alderman Zima, seconded by Alderman Randy Scannell to approve the budget as amended. Any discussion? We're gonna use the board, we're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna adopt the levy. Okay? All right, so let's use the board on the proposed budget. You did. This next one should be an easy vote. Okay, and that passes 11-1. And then Dawn is sending out to you the levy limit. And this is what the businesses and the residents of the city are going to see. They're going to receive a tax bill in January. Their tax bill on this assessed value was $885. The same rate is going to be applied next year of $885. So we are, adopting the budget. Just to approve right. Is there a second? This is, okay, there's a motion by Alderman Zima, second by Alderman Randy Scannell to adopt the tax levy limit as presented by the clerk. If you'd use the board on this. Okay, and that passes by a vote of 11-1. So you have, I want to say one thing. We have a meeting scheduled for the 15th, but in talking to Director Vonk, Director Grenier, and I know that there's no need to have a meeting on the 15th. So let me do that real quickly. A motion is second to cancel the 15th meeting. There's no, I had it kind of as a veto date, but we don't need that. So with that, we're going to cancel the motion of the meeting of the 15th, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh. Wait, late communication here.
I just have a
Andy.
question here. No, I don't have all the information. Could I just give the communication to Chris after?
Fine.
Or do I gotta do it?
All right, no.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Scannell. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. All right, happy Thanksgiving, you guys. Okay, this is the way we should do these meetings. I mean, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're all getting, you know what I mean? It's
All meetings?
all our meetings.
Can I vote on that? This is great.
Don't count on it. He is such a
He always has to get one in.
I know. Sure.